Hi friends! If you click to check out the new Fenty Beauty Pro Filt'r Soft Matte Powder Foundation, then please keep on watching. Hi, I'm Alicia. If it's your first time here, thank you so much for clicking on my video. And if you are returning, well, thank you for visiting me again. Kinkysweat stands for my kinky hair and sweat life. I am a fitness professional who loves things, all movement and beauty. If you want to check out what I do in between the makeup, so you can head over to my Instagram. And you're probably asking two questions. Alicia, your sides are awfully curled and wild. I know, they'll be like that for the entire video. And secondly, Alicia, you haven't reviewed a Fenty Beauty complexion product in quite some time. Yes, I also realized that. I figured, let me give it a shot, especially because when I read the ingredients, it did not have any fragrance, and I typically avoid Fenty Beauty foundations because they are very perfumey. Back when she released her first Pro Filt'r foundation, September 8th, 2017, I put that stuff on and I smelled it on my face all day. And when she released her hydrating version, I discovered that also had fragrance, skipped over it as well. Her concealer did not, and I liked her concealer. I thought it was a nice consistency and all that jazz. So that is my brief history with Fenty Beauty complexion products. So let's get into these product details. I did use this already, but I put it back in the box, just for presentation purposes. This retails for $36. It comes in a total of 50 shades, fam, so quite the extensive shade range, as Fenty Beauty always likes to present. Light to full coverage, matte finish, as it is a powder foundation. And shame on me for not including the following: that this foundation weighs in at 9.1 grams or 0.32 ounces of product, has a suggested shelf life of 12 months, and oh, look here, it is made in Italy. Vegan and cruelty free, and we're expecting blurred finish with no flashback, even though it is a matte finish. Does not settle into lines, does not accentuate pores, and it is sweat, humidity, and crease resistant. This is just okay, that's better. I had a hard time picking my shade, so I thought it'll be best to go to Sephora, and of course with social distancing protocol and all that, I managed to get shade matched, but I do not like the shade that I picked. I'm just going to tell you right now. I have shade 300, and it's medium to tan skin with warm undertones. I thought that was a suitable decision because based on this little, it says cool covers blue and pink undertones, neutral covers balance of cool and warm. Warm, you got orange, red, peach, yellow, golden, and bronze. And I figured, well, maybe I'm more golden. I should have stuck with neutral, but neutral looked too pink. And then of course warm olive is green and golden. As I'm looking at the shades now, I probably could have gone with 280, which looked really pink on screen, or 270. That's the medium to tan skin with cool undertones. Here is footage of the product fresh out of the box. You see the Fenty Beauty logo embossing on the powder. It's a beautiful compact and very much consistent with the Fenty Beauty design that we've seen thus far. And here's a swatch of the shade. And thank you to Glam Girl Chelsea. Hey Chelsea. When she reviewed this foundation, she had said, and many others also, that this actually swatches darker than how it appears in pan. And although it looked like my skin match in the pan when I saw it for the first time, upon applying this, I thought, this might be a little too warm. And do I want to return it? Not really, because I don't want to add to the waste of makeup and all these things. So I might just make it work, fam. And why don't I just start over? Do I even use powder foundation? I don't. I'm not one that wears it often, but I appreciate its benefits. One, there's no liquid involved. You can apply this with a sponge or a brush. It doesn't need to dry down. It doesn't need to set, right? It's a powder foundation, so you can buff the powder into your skin to your heart's content. You can control the coverage. If you want less coverage, then you'll use a longer bristle brush. This is more like an in-between brush, but this is the Sonia G Master Face, so it has some movement there. If you wanted more coverage, then you will use a much thicker, dense brush. This is my Shiseido GSN02, so depending on the coverage will determine the tool that you decide to apply this with. Lighter coverage probably achieved with a damp sponge, as the moisture from the water will kind of work the product into the skin and won't leave behind a full coverage finish like a denser packed brush would. Another benefit I appreciate is the fact that you can apply a little more coverage on top of maybe a liquid or cream foundation. Another benefit, it's a powder. If you live on the normal oily or oily to oilier, okay, part of the skin type spectrum, then of course powders will absorb that excess oil and leave behind a matte finish without looking dry if the formula is really good. The only powder foundation that I have used is the Shiseido Synchro Skin Self-Refreshing Custom Finish Powder Foundation in 340 Oak. So I have quick swatches here of both the Shiseido and the Fenty Beauty Foundation, powder foundation, excuse me. I much rather like the Shiseido match on me more. But again, let's pull you in a little closer. That's enough. And we can see this powder foundation in action. Again, I applied it 2 days ago and I actually really like the texture of this powder foundation. The fact that it is a powder and is naturally more dry than a liquid or cream medium. I enjoy the fact as I applied it on my skin and had it rest, if you will, on my skin for a few hours, that it did not look like a powder, that it melted really nicely into my skin. I would say though, if you are on the drier part of the skin type spectrum, I'm not sure what your history is with powder foundation. I would only assume that you typically will stay away from them because maybe not an ideal texture to work with. If you have dry skin, if you have any patchiness, if you're scabbing, right? I have a little bit of scabbing here. So this foundation, you know what? Let me just put it on, okay? Again, 300 medium to tan skin with warm undertones. You see this, right? And you're like, oh, that would match her. What is she talking about? I think I showed this in the close-up already, but here you have the inside with the puff. And actually, this is a magnetic pan. You see the little pinhole here, so you could switch out if... Would they be selling separate pan refills? That's the question. Also, this is available on Sephora and FentyBeauty.com only at the moment in the US. I think in the UK, this is at... Harrods? Is it Harrods? I'm so sorry. I'm so bad at this. I don't know if they will sell refills of this. Well, let me make sure this is actually... Oh, maybe it's not magnetic and I'm making that up. I'm trying to dislodge it. I thought it would have been, but I don't know. I guess I'll find out down below in the comments after I post this video. Here we go. Quick swatch. You see what I'm saying? I'm in front of natural light right now. Would you have expected that shade to come from the... Look at it. Look at it. And when I apply this, as you saw in the... My exposure is just changing like crazy. And as you saw in the first demo slide, you saw my face. I was like, whoa. Let's try this again. Let me go in with Sonia G. Smooth buffer. I'll take some, and why not? Definitely appropriate now to use my Fenty Beauty mirror. And I have moisturizer on, specifically my Good Molecules silicone-free priming moisturizer. In the instructions on the product page, Fenty Beauty highly encourage one to start off with a primer or your favorite moisturizer. Oh, okay, we have the clouds rolling in, so different light situation. It's okay, we'll be able to handle it. So it's not bad, and this could have been my error. I just looked at the pan. I thought it would have been a good match. I swatched it on my arm, of course, sanitized hands and all. I thought it was fine. I would rather have a different shade. I think this might be a little too warm. And I'm also trying to figure out if I think the coverage is indeed... Obviously, it is light to full. This is probably my fourth time layering. And you see that some of my hyperpigmentation is still showing through. Unfortunately, this is a fresh one. So if you want to take a look around there, it's still showing through, but it's a little more blurred. Maybe if we take a little more with our sponge, see how that does, and we can press it on the portions that need a little more coverage. And the sponge applicator included in the compact is encouraged to use for touch-ups on the gizzo. But again, another benefit of this, if you insist on wearing a full face of makeup under your mask, the powder foundation definitely will not move as much as a liquid one. Even a liquid foundation, I would say, that's formulated to be matte in finish, I think you'll be more successful in this not moving under your mask since it is a powder. There's like a little bit of warmth coming through. I like it. I like it. Just for comparison's sake, I'll go in now with the Shiseido, of course, using our Sonia towel. Let's see how this works out. I'm going in with Oak. Now the sun is really trying to sabotage this demo. I'm trying to go in with as much of the Fenty with the Shiseido so we can have an even display of both powder foundations, and I felt the need to bring in the Shiseido because this was my prominent powder foundation of choice and of use if I were to compare it. All right, we're in close. Here is the Fenty side. I'm not sure if you can detect the powder, if you can detect any texture. It melts into the skin quite nicely. I would say it has a very velvety, silky feel. It was fairly easy to apply, but I do feel the need sometimes to buff, especially if I'm applying layers, to get the level of coverage I like. Whereas the Shiseido side, I do think is a much better match for me. And dare I say, I think it has better blending for me than the Fenty Beauty one. The advantage Fenty Beauty has over Shiseido, of course, is the shade range. Without a doubt, I think we should all know and applaud Fenty Beauty's efforts, Rihanna's efforts, and all who own Fenty Beauty to release 50 shades for all their complexion products. But to this day, I still haven't nailed my Fenty shade. And how dare I say that when there are humans with much deeper skin tones than me who have struggled with finding not only a shade match, but an undertone match, right? So Fenty Beauty definitely delivers those options. All I'm saying is that I think when it comes to the medium tan range of things, it could be a little tricky, all right? And as the day went on, when I applied this for the first time, the color did change a little bit. It did change a little bit. I looked a touch warmer than the rest of my body, and I'm like, oh boy. So that told me I would have to balance it out with a concealer of some sort. But I do really love the Shiseido, and I could also go in with the sponge again just so I can see how it goes. And when I apply this powder with the sponge, I find that the color doesn't change as much as the Fenty one. I think, of course, I picked the wrong undertone for the Fenty, unfortunately. And I do have a little more texture here than I do on this side. But you can see the difference. Like, look how much more warmth I have on the Fenty side versus the Shiseido side. You know, excuse me while I cut into my own video. As I'm looking at this footage, I do think the Fenty looks very nice in terms of the undertone. I was afraid when I wore it for a few hours that day and looked at Bay's bathroom mirror as I was there at the time after a few hours had passed, I looked really warm. So it appeared to have settled into the true color that it is. And it could be also that the oils that I produced influenced that shade as well. So although I might not sound I'm crazy about it, I think I'm still trying to decide if it's an acceptable shade match for me, because again, it looks pretty good. And just as I appreciate the shade in Huda Beauty's foundation stick, how it gives me a little warmth, I am appreciating the fact that 300 is giving me a little more warmth also, but it's not overwhelmingly off. And yes, Oak from the Shiseido powder foundation is my dead-on match because I have not tanned in months. I think I'm going like a year and a half, nor have I used self-tanner. So unfortunately for me and my complexion, it has gone down to its more sallow looking self, and I think that's why Oak is actually my true match. But I always appreciate a little more warmth coming from whatever foundation I am currently using. Wanted to put that in there because it sounds like I'm giving up on this powder foundation when I'm actually not. I have it right here still. I think ultimately I will still use it on its own, maybe play with combining it with different foundations. I definitely want to combine it with Oak from the Shiseido powder foundation. You know, perhaps I'll apply the Fenty Beauty around the perimeters and Oak on the inner parts of my face just to create that contrast, because I have said prior that we all have different undertones on one face, and sometimes we have to mix and match to address all those different tones. So see you back in the video. Thanks so much for listening. For kicks, why don't we apply the Fenty on the Shiseido side, and you can detect a little bit of that warmth on the hollows of the cheeks. Here are both sides of the foundation so you could take a look at the shades and textures again. I think ultimately, if you love powder foundation, if you are a fan of Fenty, the fact that this doesn't have any fragrance and the texture is actually really nice, it blends into the skin well, feels like velvet, is a plus. What I think is a con is that the shade matching is not as consistent as they would like it to be. If you go from your liquid foundation shade to the same shade in this, I don't think it'll be a direct match. I think this will look a little deeper actually. And from what I remember, I think when I was still trying to figure out the soft Filt'r foundation shade for myself, I jumped down to 310. If I would have purchased 310 in this powder foundation, I would just look tan on my face and the rest of my body lonely without the sun. And that is a disadvantage if you cannot go to Sephora, if you don't feel safe going to a Sephora and you have to solely rely ordering from online. The shade matching will be tricky even if you already have a Fenty Beauty foundation. If you are a dead-on match with the Fenty Beauty liquid foundation that you already own, I would go a little lighter from that if you want to buy this powder foundation. I do like the texture. This is the Fenty. This is the Shiseido. I think the Shiseido is a little more silky, a little more lightweight in feel, and I just appreciate how it just blends into the skin and it doesn't look like a powder foundation. It's kind of insane. Now, I would say, again, depending on your skin type, prep accordingly. If you are a drier or normal to dry skin type and you insist on wearing powder foundation, make sure you moisturize well so the skin has a little bit of tack and you're not going in on it feeling soft matte. You know what I'm saying? Again, would I recommend this? Yes, I would in terms of the texture, but part of me is like, ooh, if you already have a powder foundation that you love and if you're not able to go in store and get a shade match, I would say wait on it until you know for sure from watching different reviews and people who have a similar skin tone to you to really nail down your match, because it will be a shame that you get the wrong shade and you can't wear it. You know, $36, not super luxe, but not drugstore either, is mid-range, but it still can be very high on some people's budgets. So just keep that in mind. For me, I'd rather use my Shiseido powder foundation if I were to use a powder foundation, just simply because it's a better match for me shade and undertone wise, and I do prefer the texture over the Fenty Beauty one. Will I still use the Fenty Beauty? Absolutely, and I'll let you know if I decide to get another shade. I'm still thinking about it because I do want to wear this foundation and not have it go to waste. I also don't want to return it and just kind of make do with what I have. So maybe I'll mix this and the Shiseido together. Let me know if you're picking up the Fenty Beauty Pro Filt'r Palgia foundation, what you think about it if you already have it, or your concerns about it based on my observations. And until then, fam, that is a wrap. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope this video helped. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and maybe consider subscribing to my channel. And until then, I'll see you in here again with another review, tutorial, foundation extravaganza, monthly favorites, or daily vlog. Take care, and I'll see you again soon.